Itzel drifted through the murky waters of the ancient canal, her feathery gills undulating like underwater flowers in the gentle current. The morning light filtered down through the green water, casting dancing shadows on the muddy bottom where she searched for bloodworms and small crustaceans. At 8 inches long, she was fully grown, her mottled brown skin helping her blend with the canal bed, though the distinctive external gills and perpetual smile of her kind made her unmistakable as an axolotl. The canals of Xochimilco had been her world for all 3 years of her life, but lately, that world felt smaller each day. Where once hundreds of her kind had glided through these waters, now Itzel could go days without encountering another axolotl. The ancient lake system that had sustained her ancestors for millennia was changing, and not for the better. She remembered her grandmother's stories, passed down through chemical signals and gentle touches, about the time when Lake Xochimilco stretched endlessly in all directions. Back then, the water ran clear and cold, fed by mountain springs, and axolotls numbered in the millions. The Aztecs had called them water monsters and believed they were the earthly form of the god Xolotl. Now, the lake had shrunk to a network of canals threading between artificial islands called chinampas, and the water carried strange tastes that made Itzel's sensitive skin tingle unpleasantly. This morning brought a new challenge. As Itzel foraged near a cluster of water hyacinth, she detected an unfamiliar vibration in the water. The rhythmic churning grew stronger, accompanied by the acrid smell of fuel. A tour boat loaded with visitors was approaching, its motor disturbing the sediment and sending waves through her quiet hunting ground. She pressed herself against the muddy bank, her chromatophores darkening her skin to match the shadows. The boat passed overhead, its wake stirring up debris and plastic fragments that drifted down like artificial snow. When the disturbance settled, Itzel emerged to find her carefully chosen hunting spot transformed into a wasteland of churned mud and scattered trash. This was becoming the pattern of her days. The tour boats brought curious humans eager to see the floating gardens of Xochimilco, but their presence made survival increasingly difficult for the canal's original inhabitants. The noise disrupted her ability to detect prey through the lateral line organs along her sides, and the pollution from the motors created dead zones where nothing edible could survive. Hunger gnawed at her belly as she swam deeper into the canal system, following a route her mother had shown her years ago. The water here ran slightly clearer, filtered through beds of native plants that the local farmers still maintained. Itzel's spirits lifted as she spotted movement in the vegetation ahead. A small school of kerasinfish, their silver sides flashing as they darted between the stems. She positioned herself carefully, using her powerful tail to maintain position against the current. Axolotls were ambush predators, and patience was essential. When a fish ventured close enough, she struck with lightning speed, her wide mouth creating a powerful suction that drew the prey in whole. The fish provided much-needed protein, but it would take several more to satisfy her hunger. As she hunted, Itzel became aware of another presence in the water. The chemical signature was familiar yet strange, definitely an axolotl, but carrying scents she didn't recognize. She followed the trail until she encountered a male roughly her size, but his coloration was unlike anything she'd seen. Instead of the mottled brown of wild axolotls, his skin showed patches of pale pink and white. The stranger approached cautiously, his movements slightly awkward compared to her fluid grace. Through a series of gentle touches and chemical signals, she learned his story. His name was Cipacli, and he was one of the returned one's axolotls bred in captivity and released back into the wild as part of a conservation effort. He had been born in a laboratory at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, raised on a diet of pellets and bloodworms in sterile tanks, then released into the canals with a small group of others like him. Cipacli's pale coloration made him vulnerable to predators, and his laboratory upbringing had left him poorly equipped for life in the wild. He struggled to hunt effectively and didn't know the safe routes through the canal system. But he carried something Eitzel had never encountered: genetic diversity from axolotl populations maintained in laboratories around the world. Over the following days, Eitzel found herself drawn to this strange companion. She taught him the art of hunting, showing him how to read the subtle vibrations that revealed hidden prey. In return, his presence awakened something in her that she had thought lost forever: the possibility of continuing her lineage. Their partnership faced immediate challenges. The dry season was approaching, and water levels in the canals were dropping. Agricultural runoff from the Chinampas carried fertilizers that triggered massive algae blooms, depleting oxygen and creating toxic conditions. Worse, invasive species introduced by the aquarium trade were establishing themselves in the ecosystem. One morning, Eitzel encountered a school of tilapia, their aggressive feeding behavior stirring up the bottom and destroying the delicate habitat where native invertebrates lived. These foreign fish competed directly with axolotls for food and space, and their rapid reproduction gave them a significant advantage. She watched helplessly as they devoured a patch of bloodworms she had been saving for leaner times. The crisis deepened when Sapakli fell ill. His laboratory-bred immune system couldn't cope with a fungal infection that wild axolotls had developed resistance to over generations. Eitzel stayed close to him as he weakened, sharing what food she could find and guiding him to areas where the water quality was slightly better. She had seen this before. The returned ones often struggled with diseases that didn't affect wild populations. As Sapakli recovered slowly, Eitzel made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the oldest section of the canal system, where the water ran through ancient stone channels built by Aztec engineers, she found a hidden refuge. Here, the water was cooler and cleaner, filtered through layers of volcanic rock. Native plants grew thick along the banks, and the invertebrate life was abundant. More importantly, she wasn't alone. 3 other wild axolotls had found this sanctuary, including an elderly female whose scarred hide spoke of decades of survival. The old one, whom Eitzel came to think of as Abuela, had lived through the worst of the environmental changes and possessed knowledge that could mean the difference between extinction and survival. Abuela taught them about the seasonal patterns of the canals, when to move to deeper water and when to seek the shallows. She showed them which plants indicated good water quality and which areas to avoid when the rains brought agricultural runoff. Most crucially, she revealed the locations of several other refuges scattered throughout the canal system, hidden pockets where axolotls could survive even as their broader habitat deteriorated. Under Abuela's guidance, the small group began to thrive. Sapakli's health improved in the cleaner water, and his hunting skills developed rapidly. Eitzel felt her body preparing for reproduction, triggered by the improved conditions and the presence of a suitable mate. The future, which had seemed so uncertain, began to hold promise again, but their sanctuary faced threats of its own. Urban development was encroaching on the canal system, and Eitzel could taste the chemical signatures of construction runoff in the water. The chinampas that had coexisted with axolotls for centuries were being converted to more intensive agriculture, increasing pollution loads. Even in their hidden refuge, the water quality fluctuated unpredictably. The group developed strategies for survival that their ancestors never needed. They learned to detect the early signs of pollution events and retreat to the deepest, most protected areas. They established food caches in multiple locations, ensuring that environmental disasters couldn't eliminate all their resources at once. Most importantly, they maintained connections with other survivor groups, sharing information about conditions throughout the canal system. When the breeding season arrived, Eitzel and Sapakli performed the ancient courtship dance of their species. She deposited her eggs carefully among the roots of native plants, choosing locations where the water flow would provide optimal oxygen levels. Sapakli fertilized them with the genetic heritage of laboratory populations, creating offspring that carried both wild survival instincts and enhanced genetic diversity.